Before the glitter, before the madness, before the crocodile swag, there was a quiet, awkward man with a nervous twitch and a voice that barely rised above a whisper. That version of Rumpelstiltskin, the meek spinster from the Enchanted Forest, isn't just a setup for the grand transformation into the Dark One. He's a full character in his own right, and understanding him is key to understanding every monstrous, magical, heartbreaking thing that follows. See, Robert Carlyle doesn't play Rumple like a blank slate that power corrupts. He plays him as someone who's already fractured, already carrying the weight of shame, rejection, and fear. Carlyle doesn't need a single drop of magic to make Rumple compelling. But let's rewind the clock to Rumple's origin story, dearies. His father, Malcolm, is where it all begins, or more accurately, where everything goes off the rails. Now, Malcolm is a piece of work. He is the kind of guy who looks at fatherhood and says, yeah, that feels optional. He abandons Rumple in a spin of selfishness so profound, it practically echoes. And what does little Rumple learn from that? That he's not good enough to love, that people leave, that he's fundamentally disposable. That's a great foundation, right? Perfect for nurturing emotional stability. This abandonment becomes the emotional bedrock of everything Rumple becomes. Carlyle plays these moments with a haunting subtlety. When adult Rumple later talks about being left behind, there's no melodrama, just a tremble in the voice, a glance downward, a quiet devastation that never healed truly. Fast forward, Rumple grows up, becomes a spinster, humble, poor, and constantly dismissed. And people are not subtle about their disgust. They call him a coward, they sneer. Even the townspeople who benefit from his trade treat him like dirt under their boots. And honestly, he is afraid, not just of conflict, but of becoming his father, of becoming the kind of man who runs. Which brings us to Mila. Mila, his wife, is bold, brash, and restless. She wants adventure, freedom, danger. Rumple wants stability, family, and love. This is not a match made in fairy tale heaven. It's a pressure cooker waiting to explode. In Carlyle, he doesn't play Rumple as blissfully unaware. He plays him terrified. Terrified he's not enough for her. Terrified she's slipping away. Terrified he's about to lose the only thing grounding him. And he's right. Mila grows resentful. The domestic life suffocates her, and when Rumple is drafted into the Ogre War, we get the first major turning point. He goes off to fight, desperate to prove that he isn't a coward, that he can be brave, that he's not the man people whisper about behind his back and in his face. And then a seer tells him that his actions in the war will leave his son fatherless. Now let's take a moment here, because this is the moment that splits his life in two. He hears he'll lose his son and he panics, but not because he's selfish, but because he cannot bear the thought of repeating his father's mistake. So he hurts himself. He literally shatters his own body to escape the war, and in doing so, he becomes the exact thing that Mila despises: a coward, a cripple, a joke. He sacrifices his dignity to protect his family, and in doing so, he loses their respect. And again, Carlyle doesn't scream or beg in these scenes, he just deflates. Like all the air has gone out of his lungs. It's some of the most restrained, devastating acting I've seen in the series. And when he returns home, the town mocks him, and Rumple, instead of being a war hero, is once again small, powerless, laughable. This is the man who becomes the Dark One, not a power-hungry villain, not a scheming mastermind, a broken, desperate man who just wanted to matter. And that's the genius of Carlyle's performance, because even when he eventually does gain power, you never forget where he came from. That twitchy little spinster is always there somewhere. The meek Rumpelstiltskin isn't the prologue, he's the tragedy that drives this entire epic. Like I said, before he was the Dark One, before he was Mr. Gold, before he spun a single strand of golden thread, Rumpelstiltskin was a doormat. Like, let's not sugarcoat it. He was anxious, insecure, constantly looked down upon by his peers, and perpetually terrified of the world around him. But that's exactly where the brilliance of Carlyle's performance starts. You don't just believe Rumple is weak, you can feel it. His voice, barely more than a whisper, like He's constantly asking for permission to exist. His posture curls in onto itself. His eyes dart like he's expecting a blow, even in moments of quiet. And that's key to the tragedy. From the moment we meet him, we understand that this is a man who has never truly been safe. Carlyle doesn't play this version of Rumple for pity, he plays him for truth. It's uncomfortable, even frustrating to watch, especially in a world like the Enchanted Forest, where cowardice is punished and power is everything, but that discomfort is intentional. You're not necessarily supposed to root for this Rumple, but you suddenly are. The turning point, of course, is when he becomes the Dark One. But what makes this transition so compelling is how fully Carlyle transformed, not just in look or voice, but the essence. Rumple doesn't choose power because he wants to dominate. He chooses it because he wants to protect. At least that's what he tells himself in the beginning. That's the heartbreaking part. His son, Balefire, is everything to him. And in a world where fathers are slaughtered in meaningless wars, Rumple's choice to injure himself and escape the draft seems at first like a desperate act of love. But from the moment he hears the word coward spat at him by a stranger, it becomes clear that Rumple's fear runs deep. He doesn't just want to protect Bae, he wants to rewrite the story of who he is. No longer the man who was left by Mila, no longer the joke of the village, no longer the weak one. So when he kills the Dark One and takes that power for himself, it's not just an origin story, it's an act of redefinition. Carlyle plays this with eerie joy, the wide eyes, the trembling hands, the way his voice goes into those little riddles. It's mania, part liberation and part mask. Because even with all that power, Rumple is still haunted. And this is where Carlyle's performance becomes something far more than just good acting. He shows us that power doesn't fix broken people. It just gives them new ways to hide their cracks. As the Dark One, Rumple gains control. He gains respect, he gains fear from others. He doesn't gain peace. He's still alone, still paranoid, still clinging to Balefire. Every decision he makes is filtered through that desperate need to be enough for his son, and ironically, it's the desperation that drives them apart. When Balefire finally asks Rumple to give up magic to prove that he loves him more than the power, Rumple can't do it. It's one of the most devastating scenes in the show, because by then, Carlyle has made us understand why. Magic for Rumple is more than power, it's identity, it's security, it's the armor he wears to feel worthy. And he's terrified that without it, he'll become that fragile, pathetic man again, the one everyone laughed at, spat at, the one Mila abandoned. This is where Carlyle's performance fractures in the best way possible. You can see the tug of war behind his eyes. The man who loves his son versus the man who's afraid of being powerless again. And when Bae disappears through that portal, Rumple's scream isn't just grief, it's self-loathing. He knows he chose wrong, and he'll spend centuries trying to undo that choice. That failure defines him. It poisons every relationship that comes after, and it creates the foundation for his next identity. Mr. Gold. If Rumpelstiltskin is chaos incarnate, then Mr. Gold is the illusion of order. Gone are the clawed hands and sing-along riddles, the glittering skin. In his place stands a man with pressed suits, polished shoes, and the quiet menace of someone who never needs to raise his voice to be heard. From the moment he appears in Storybook, Mr. Gold isn't just a businessman, he's a symbol. A man who knows things, who owns more than he lets on, and who seems to pull the town strings with a single glance. Robert Carlyle doesn't simply play Mr. Gold as a version of Rumpelstiltskin in hiding. He plays him like an actor wearing a role. Every moment is deliberate. Every pause is loaded, and that cane, that ever-present cane, is less about mobility and more about punctuation. Unlike the flamboyance of the Dark One, Mr. Gold is understated, but don't mistake restraint for weakness. His manipulation style is refined and very deliberate. He doesn't shout, he whispers truth. He offers favors, but always with strings attached. He gives people just enough rope to hang themselves, and when they do, he's already there holding the other end. Mr. Gold is the puppet master of Storybrooke. Need a legal loophole closed? He knows one. Need someone gone? He knows a way. And need is the currency he deals in. Carlyle plays him like a man who never raises his voice because he never has to. The power comes not from volume but from precision. His relationship with Regina is perhaps the clearest window into just how sharp that precision can be. Early on, they appear to be partners, both working to uphold the curse, both invested in keeping Storybrooke's citizens in the dark, but the dynamic is never equal. Gold is always 2 steps ahead, and Regina knows it. You can see it in the way she stiffens when he enters the room. She knows he remembers who he really is long before he admits it, and that knowledge makes him dangerous. Their relationship is a chess game, dressed as an alliance. When she pushes, he leans back. When she threatens, he smiles. When she's vulnerable, he twists the knife just enough to remind her who's really in control. And yet, there's also a strange mentorship there. Like he sees her as the student who never quite graduated from the masterclass in manipulation. But even with that said, Mr. Gold isn't untouchable. As magic begins to seep back into Storybrooke, the carefully constructed mask begins to slip. He's no longer the man holding all the cards because the deck itself is changing. And that's when Carlyle starts blending the personas. You see the twitch of Rumpel's madness behind Gold's cold stare. The polished words start to crackle with something unhinged. The suit remains, but the monster beneath it starts to breathe. Mr. Gold was never a true transformation. It was a shell, a performance, a way to survive without magic. And once the power returns, so does the truth. He's not just Gold, he's not just the dark one, he's both. Always has been. This duality is what makes Mr. Gold one of the most compelling characters in the show. He's a modern man wrapped around an ancient wound. And through it all, Carlyle's performance anchors him, not in realism, but in psychological consistency. Because Mr. Gold isn't just a disguise, he's a coping mechanism, a persona built to contain the chaos of Rumpelstiltskin. Okay, I can't do it how he does it, so I'm just gonna stop. But personas crack. And when they do, it's not just the world that suffers, it's Gold himself. And no amount of deals or suits or carefully measured words can stop the past from bleeding through. By the end of this chapter in his story, Mr. Gold isn't gone, but he's exposed. The man who tried to rewrite his story through control finds himself being written by something entirely different. Consequence. And his relationships begin to shift. The cost of being both Gold and Rumpelstiltskin becomes harder and harder to bear. Before Rumpelstiltskin was the dark one, he was just a man, a father, a broken man, yes, but still a man who loved his son more than anything in the world. So I'd be remiss if I didn't go back a little bit and dig a little bit more into Bellfire and Rumpelstiltskin. Everything Rumpel does, no matter how twisted or destructive, starts from a place of love. And love, in his case, quickly becomes poison. Bellfire, or Bay as he lovingly called him, isn't just Rumpel's son. He's Rumpel's last tether to humanity. The last pure thing in his life that he slowly tainted by fear and self-hatred. And Carlyle plays early fatherhood with a delicate touch. There's a softness in his eyes that we almost never see again. When Rumpel becomes the dark one, it's not a clean break. It's not a now I'm evil. It's gradual. It's drowning. He tells himself he did it to protect Bay, and maybe he did, but protecting quickly becomes controlling. Love becomes possession, and Robert Carlyle, the genius that he is, lets us see the shift even when the script doesn't say it out loud. And then comes the moment, the portal, the one that hurts no matter how many times you see it, because I've watched this over and over and I'm just like, oh my God, why would you leave Ben like that? Why would you leave him? Okay, let me get back. Bay opens a way out, a way forward, a literal escape from magic, from curses, from blood-soaked trails that Rumpel's been making. And Rumpel hesitates, and that hesitation is everything. He lets the portal take his son. The scream Carlyle gives in the scene isn't just grief, it's realization. He knows instantly that he's made the worst decision of his life. And that's when Bay stops being a boy and starts being the ghost that Rumpel spends the next few centuries chasing, but never truly reaching. Later comes Storybrooke in New York and Neil. And for one brief moment, it looks like maybe, just maybe, Rumpel will get a second chance. But of course he won't. This is once upon a time where happy endings are temporary and trauma is generational. The dynamic between Rumpel and Neil is no longer one of father and child. It's more like two survivors of the same wreckage who don't know how to look at each other in the eye after everything's all said and done. Neil wants nothing to do with him, and honestly, I get it. This is a man who let his child fall into a different dimension rather than give up magic. A man who's done unspeakable things in the name of love, and still Carlyle gives Rumpel that sliver of hope, that desperate little voice in every scene with Neil. Forgive me, please let me fix this. But there's no fixing, not really. What makes it even more brutal is how Rumpel never quite learns. He keeps making the same mistakes. He makes new mistakes and keeps choosing the wrong thing for the right reasons. He wants to protect Neil but ends up manipulating him. He wants to connect but hides the truth. And when Neil dies, Rumpel breaks. But even that grief doesn't purify him. It just sinks him deeper. Now he's lost Bay twice, and this time there's no porter to chase, no deal to make, just absence. Losing Neil doesn't just crush Rumpel, it echoes forward, warping his relationship with Henry in the process, the boy who would be his undoing. Henry is Bay's son, which means Henry is a living, breathing piece of the one person Rumpel wanted to save, wanted to love, but ultimately couldn't. And that's where things get complicated, because Henry isn't just a grandchild, he's a second chance. And if there's one thing Rumpelstiltskin is addicted to, even more than magic, is a way of redoing the past. But here's the thing. Rumpel doesn't know how to do better. He only knows how to do again, do over. And that's exactly the problem. He approaches Henry not with openness or vulnerability, but with the same emotional sleight of hand that cost him Bellfire in the first place. Manipulation dressed up as love. Carlyle plays his entire relationship like a man trying to paint over a cracked wall. It may look fine at first glance, but the damage is still underneath, and eventually it shows. Rumpel ultimately wants Henry's love, wants his approval, but he doesn't want to earn it. He wants to claim it like a prize. And that, of course, is not ever the way to go. We get brief flickers of warmth between them, shared moments where Rumpel drops the act and lets himself be vulnerable, but those moments are rare and fleeting. And honestly, that's what makes them hit harder. Carlyle knows how to wring every last drop of a single line, a single look. When Rumpel shows his admiration for Henry, he makes you kind of believe it, even if the moment before he was lying through his teeth. There's a line that Rumpel never crosses with Henry. He never fully turns on him. And in this show, that restraint matters. It's a small thing maybe, but it's real. And it speaks volumes about who Rumpel is at his core. Someone constantly at war with himself. Someone who keeps losing the fight, but never quite stops. This is where Carlyle's performance shines again, in the ways that are most subliminal. You don't always notice what he's doing until the scene is over. The tightening of the jaw, the way his voice catches just slightly when he talks about Bay or Henry, the way his posture shifts when he thinks no one's watching. Carlyle isn't playing a villain. He's playing a man who's been in emotional freefall for centuries and only recently realized he was falling at all. Henry is a symbol of Rumpel's hope, the kind of hope he couldn't hold on to with Bellfire. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. Not to undo the past, but to stop it from repeating. And really, what more can you ask from a man like Rumpelstiltskin? Not perfection, just progress. Let's get on to the master and his apprentice. When it comes to complicated relationships in Once Upon a Time, very few rival the tangled web between Rumpelstiltskin and Regina Mills. From master and student to rivals, allies, enemies, family, and back again, is a connection stitched together with manipulation, shared trauma, and a warped kind of affection. Watching Carlyle and Lana Parrilla play off of each other is like lightning in a bottle. These two were magic. So let's rewind a bit. Long before she became the evil queen, Regina was just a young woman with a heart full of longing, and Rumpelstiltskin saw it. He saw her potential, yes, but more importantly, he saw her vulnerability, and like any good manipulator, he knew how to use it. Their relationship began as one of power and balance. Rumpel was the mentor, the puppet master behind the curtain, the dark fairy godfather, promising Regina the tools to take control of her life, but there was always a price. From the very beginning, Rumpelstiltskin groomed Regina, not in a romantic sense, but in a strategic, calculating way. He weaponized her pain, her need for approval, her hatred of her mother. He shaped her into the evil queen, along with Cora, of course. Not just because she could be powerful, but because he needed her to enact the curse that would take everyone to Storybrooke and reunite him with his son. Regina thought she was gaining autonomy, but really, she was just becoming another chess piece in his game. And yet, it was never purely cold between them. There was always an undertone of familiarity, even respect. Rumpel saw himself in Regina, the broken child turned monster. And Regina, despite everything, had a strange loyalty to him. She never truly trusted him, and she definitely resented him, but she also understood him in a way others didn't. That mutual darkness created a bond. Dysfunctional? Absolutely, but also undeniable. When the curse finally hits and we're transported to Storybrooke, their roles blur even more. Mr. Gold and Mayor Mears. Wait. Okay, let me go back. Wait. I keep doing. Wait. Okay. Wait. Oh, girl. I gotta cut this. I gotta do a lot of cutting. I am messing up. Okay. Hold on. Let me drink some water. Hold on. Girl, get it together. Okay. Mr. Gold. Wait. Oh, God. I can't even do it. Let's get back. Okay. Mr. Gold and Mayor Mills are both rulers of their own domains. They strike deals, stab backs, and occasionally share moments of twisted vulnerability. Gold still holds secrets over her. Regina still tries to outmaneuver him. But there are cracks in the armor. Moments where it's clear that they are the only two who really understand what it's like to be both feared and lonely. And then comes Henry. Oh, Henry. Regina's adopted son, Rumpel's biological grandson. If anything complicates their dynamic more, it's him. Suddenly, they're not just dark lords, they're family, kind of, sort of, very, very reluctantly. And this awkward connection forces them to confront their own legacies. Regina, desperate to be a good mother, Rumpel, desperate to reclaim what he lost with Bellfire. Neither truly wants to admit how much they care. And yet, time and time again, we see how deeply they both want to be better, even if they stumble 1,000 times along the way. What makes their relationship so compelling is that it never seems to settle. They never truly become friends. They never truly become enemies. There's always a balance of power, a layer of distrust, and a sliver of reluctant admiration. Sometimes, just sometimes, there's even something resembling tenderness. Rumpel calls her dearie, with both affection and menace. Well, he says that to everybody, so that doesn't really count. You know how people say babe. Like, hey babe. And then a boyfriend come, hey babe, like, is this just a word for you? Okay, let me go back. But beneath all the snark, there's mutual recognition. I see your darkness because I live with my own. If you're looking for a relationship on this show built entirely on resentment, blood debts, and the messiest possible version of revenge, look no further than Rumpelstiltskin and Captain Hook, aka Killian Jones. These two go together like fire and gasoline, and every time they're on screen together, you just know something is going to explode. Their origin story is one of the ugliest in the series, and that's saying something. Hook seduces Rumpel's wife, Mila. Rumpel kills her, and Hook takes his revenge. The cycle just keeps spinning like a carousel. But here's where it gets interesting. Rumpel's rage isn't just about Mila. It's about humiliation. It's about being the man left behind, the coward, the one who wasn't enough. When we see Rumpel kill Mila in that flashback, yanking her heart from her chest and casually tossing her off the boat, it's one of the darkest moments of his arc. And yet, Carlyle doesn't play it with joy or righteous fury. He plays it with emptiness, as if the act doesn't even scratch the surface of the hurt. It's chilling, and it sets the tone for every Rumpel Hook scene that follows. Hook, to his credit, doesn't let it go. He can't let it go, and Rumpel doesn't want him to. These two are locked in a dance of mutual destruction, and they're both too proud, too broken to stop, even when it would benefit them, even when their goals align, even when Emma or Belle or Henry is in danger. These two still find the time to hurl insults across the room. It's very petty, it's ridiculous, but it's human. Carlyle leans into Rumpel's need for superiority in these scenes. He always has to be the smartest man in the room, the most dangerous, the one with the secret plan. But around Hook, that control slips. There's too much history, too much shame, and you can see it in Carlyle's eyes, the flicker of guilt when Mila's name is brought up, the disgust he feels when he realizes how much of his identity is still wrapped around that ancient betrayal. The power dynamic between them shifts constantly. Sometimes Rumpel is the puppet master dangling Hook like bait. Other times Hook is the one getting under Rumpel's skin, digging at his soft spots, and Colin O'Donoghue plays Hook as a man who knows exactly where the soft spots are. Their dialogue crackles because it's never just about the moment, it's about the past bleeding into the present. There's also a dark humor in their scenes, a theatrical flair, and Carlyle eats that up. He knows how to deliver a threat with a velvet tongue, how to make even the most dramatic monologue feel grounded in real pain. That's the key. Rumpel doesn't hate Hook because he's evil. He hates him because he's hurt. The tragedy of their dynamic is that neither one can truly move on. Hook can't forgive, Rumpel can't forget. And so they clash over and over again like clockwork. Tick tock, crocodile. Okay, that was kind of lame. I'm gonna cut the part out. Woo. If Rumpel's dynamic with Hook was a clash of vendettas and egos, his relationship with Belle is a whole different beast. This is where we leave behind blood feuds and enter into the twisted maze of intimacy, manipulation, and what some would call love. But let's be honest, this is not a love story. It's a cautionary tale. From the moment Belle steps into Rumpelstiltskin's life, it's clear she sees something others don't. While most see the Dark One as a monster, Belle, like any true romantic archetype, looks for the man underneath the curse. And Carlyle plays that duality to perfection. He doesn't just let the audience see a softened version of Rumpel when he's around Belle. He lets us feel the tension between who Rumpel wants to be and who he actually is. He's not comfortable being loved. That's what makes the relationship so tragic. Belle offers Rumpel a path to redemption, even if it's steep and full of thorns. And for brief moments he takes it, but the truth is, Rumpel is addicted to power, and no amount of love can compete with the control he craves. Carlyle makes it painfully clear in the way he responds to Belle's affection. There's a hesitance in his eyes, a flicker of fear, because if he allows himself to be vulnerable, he loses the very thing he's built his entire persona around: dominance. That's what makes their relationship so frustrating to watch. Belle sees the man he could be, Rumpel clings to the monster he's chosen to become. And every time he lies to her, every time he hides his deals and his schemes, you can almost hear the audience collectively groan. At least I could. Like, ugh, here he goes with this. This isn't just tragic romance, it's a study of self-sabotage. Underneath all the cruelty, there's a deeply wounded man who wants love, but not enough to change for it. And then there's Belle, constantly forgiving, constantly hoping, constantly putting herself back in the path of emotional harm. Some viewers see her as a doormat, myself included, but I think that undersells it a little bit. Belle is stubbornly idealistic, but over time she becomes realistic. There's a point in every Rumpel and Belle episode where you think, just maybe he's finally changed. Maybe this time he's gonna choose her over power. Maybe this time the man wins out over the beast. And that's when the knife twists. Because the truth is, Rumpelstiltskin doesn't just lie to Belle, he lies to himself. When he proposes that she should hold on to his dagger even though it's a fake, it's not just betrayal of Belle, it's betrayal of every moment he claimed he wanted. And yet, Robert Carlyle never plays those scenes as a pure villain. There's always hesitation, always guilt bubbling under the surface. Rumpel knows what he's doing is wrong, but he does it anyway. And that's what makes his character so compelling and infuriating. In his mind, power is survival. Love is vulnerability. He can't have both and still feel safe. He tells Belle what she wants to hear, while secretly clinging to the very darkness that keeps him from truly being with her. It's a cycle, one that Belle tries to break again and again, only to get caught in the same web of secrets and manipulation. And still, she doesn't give up on him, not really. Even when she locks him away, even when she banishes him, even when she discovers he's been using her to achieve some new grand scheme, she always holds on to the hope that the man she fell in love with is still in there, buried beneath the scales of the Dark One. That's what makes their story so exhausting. It doesn't evolve, it just loops around. It's a repetitive arc, but he gives it emotional weight each time it plays out. Eventually, Belle sets boundaries, real ones, and for once, she doesn't bend them. That moment she tells Rumpel she no longer believes he can change is quietly devastating. It finally hits him. He pushed her too far. And this time, the cost wasn't just Belle's trust, it was her belief in him. Even then, Rumpel doesn't immediately change. He just, goes into his spirals. He reverts, and that's real. That's honest. The show doesn't give us fairy tale redemption with these two. It gives us the story of a man who wants to be good, but not as much as he wants to win. If Regina was the queen and Snow White was the heart of Storybrooke, then Emma Swan was the anchor, the savior, as we all came to know her, the outsider turned central figure. And among all the complex bonds Emma developed over the series, none were quite as riddled with contradiction as her relationship with Rumpel. From the moment Emma arrived in Storybrooke, Rumpel knew who she was, not just her name, not just her identity as the savior, but her purpose. He didn't just anticipate her role in breaking the curse. He planned for it, planted her name in the adoption papers, arranged every breadcrumb in her path. Well, except for the whole being the mother of his grandson thing. That took him by surprise. But here's where it gets messy. Emma never knew that she was a part of this design. Well, at least not at first. To her, Mr. Gold was this uniquely startling man in charge of this whole little town. Creepy, but manageable. But as the curse unraveled and her memories grew, she began to realize the truth. Rumpel wasn't just another magical player. He was the game. the man behind the curtain, the one who knew more about her fate than she did. And Emma, she hated that. Their alliance was one of reluctant necessity. She needed his magic, his knowledge, his shortcuts. He needed her to fulfill his curse-breaking prophecy. But it was never built on trust, just mutual advantage. She saw the strings he pulled, the deals he struck, the way he twisted morality, and she wanted no part of it. Yet as much as she disliked him, Emma understood him, maybe even pitied him, because Emma knew what abandonment felt like. She knew what it meant to grow up unwanted. She recognized the deep clawing fear of loss that drove Rumpel's worst decisions. And sometimes, behind the sneers and riddles, she saw the father, the man, the scared little boy who just wanted to keep his family whole, even if he burned everything else to the ground to do it. Rumpel, in turn, respected Emma's strength, feared it even at times. She was a disruptor in his carefully crafted game. She had power he didn't fully control, and for a man like Rumpelstiltskin, that was terrifying, but it also fascinated him. She was the one person he couldn't quite manipulate into staying on script. When Emma began to flirt with darkness herself, when she became the Dark One, there was an eerie duality between them. Suddenly, she stood in his shoes, felt the seductive power of the dagger, and Rumpel saw himself in her. But where he had long since surrendered to the dagger's grip, Emma fought. She clawed her way back, and in doing so, she showed him what real courage looked like, to not let the darkness completely consume her. Their relationship never blossomed into deep friendship. It was too tangled and guarded, transactional even. But there was a strange intimacy there. Two people marked by abandonment, fate, and fear, dancing around each other in a silent truce. So let me run it back a little bit more, because again, I would be remiss if I did not dive deeper into what started this. Let's talk about the most twisted, painful, and generationally cursed relationship in Rumpelstiltskin's life. The one he had with his father, Malcolm. And to be honest, I had to look up his name because I was like, what is Rumpelstiltskin daddy name? I had to keep looking. I had to go to IMDb. Like, wait a minute, what was his name? Or as he's later known in Neverland, Peter Pan. Rumpel's story has always been defined by abandonment. His father was the first domino to fall. As a boy, Rumpel wasn't born into darkness or madness. He was wide-eyed, hopeful, and just wanted to feel safe and loved. But Malcolm, his father, was a reckless gambler, a con artist, with more excuses than intentions. He was a man so allergic to responsibility that he saw fatherhood as a chain around his ankle rather than a bond worth nurturing. The way Malcolm pawns Rumpel off onto two spinsters so that he can go off and chase money that he never quite acquires, and then later chases a magical escape to Neverland, is one of the darkest betrayals in the show's lore. And we're not just talking about a father who left. We're talking about a man who literally traded his son for the chance to be young and carefree forever. That kind of abandonment doesn't just sting, it mutates everything that comes after. It explains Rumpel's lifelong obsession with power, with control, and with holding on to the people he loves, even if he has to strangle them emotionally to keep them near. And what makes it worse is that Malcolm doesn't even seem to regret it. When Rumpel finds him again decades later, he's not some broken man crushed by the guilt of his past. He's Peter freaking Pan. Smug, cruel, manipulative, and entirely unchanged. He tries to spin the whole abandonment thing like it was destiny, as if turning into an eternal boy king of Neverland was some noble path, rather than a moral collapse. The emotional weight of their reunion is devastating because it confirms every fear Rumpel ever had about himself, that he came from someone weak, that love is conditional, that people leave, and that maybe if he doesn't seize power and cling to it with both hands, he'll be discarded too. But Unlike Malcolm, Rumpel never completely gives into the darkness. Well, not forever, anyways. That's the tragedy and the difference. Malcolm chooses eternal youth and selfishness. Rumpel, for all his crimes and cowardice, still tries. He still loves. He still wants to be better. Rumpel's showdown with Malcolm is more than just a son confronting a deadbeat dad. It's a symbolic reckoning with everything Rumpel fears about himself. His whole life has been defined by one nagging question: am I doomed to be like him? Because here's the thing, Malcolm didn't just abandon Rumpel. He chose fantasy over family. He chose selfishness over sacrifice. And the chilling part is Rumpel has done the exact same thing more than once. He let power corrupt him. He let fear drive him. And worst of all, he pushed away the very people he loved most, the same way Malcolm did to him. That parallel is what makes their dynamic so heartbreaking. Rumpel didn't become the dark one in a vacuum. He was primed for it, emotionally conditioned to believe love would never be enough, that power was the only currency that couldn't be taken from him, and that if he ever wanted to stop being seen as weak and disposable, he had to become someone people feared. But standing in front of Malcolm, this man who is literally his father and the darkest parts of himself, Rumpel sees it all. Malcolm hasn't changed. Malcolm hasn't grown, hasn't repented. He's still the same selfish child masquerading as a father, using charm to deflect guilt and manipulation to mask cowardice. So when Rumpel ultimately defeats Malcolm, it's not just vengeance, it's liberation. Malcolm's ending isn't happy, it's a sad necessity. It's Rumpel symbolically breaking the chain, the same chain that turned a scared little boy into a beast. And make no mistake, Rumpel is a beast, but he's a beast that knows he's broken. That self-awareness, that guilt is what separates him from Malcolm. And that's the tragedy. Rumpel's greatest fear, becoming like his father, came true in many ways. But the difference is, Rumpel never stopped loving. He wanted to do better. He wanted to be better. He just didn't always know how. And Malcolm never even tried. There's something deeply compelling about a man who begins his journey as a coward and ends as some sort of hero, even if it takes hundreds of years and countless signs to get there. Rumpel, Mr. Gold, the Dark One, whatever name you prefer, represents one of the most layered and morally complex characters to come out of modern television. His performance transcended genres, fairy tales, and hit something very raw and human. The fear of being unloved, the desperation to protect, the struggle to choose between power and love. What makes Rumpelstiltskin's legacy so unforgettable isn't just the magic or the memorable quotes. It's not even the schemes, the betrayals, or the signature skin. In a way, it's a reflection of the everyday person. We see our own weaknesses reflected in him. Our desire to be strong, our fear of loss, our addiction to control, and the nagging question of whether we are truly worthy of love when all the masks are stripped away. His journey wasn't clean, it wasn't linear. He fell off the wagon more times than I can count. He broke hearts, he destroyed lives. He relapsed into darkness over and over. The tragedy and the triumph of Rumpel is that even in the depths of his villain story, we never stop hoping he'd change. His story teaches us that redemption isn't a single battle, it's a war. And it's a war often fought in silence. It's the war of the soul against ego, the war of love against fear. Rumpel's life was a battleground between the man he used to be, the beast he became, and the father and husband he wanted to be. And maybe that's why it resonates so much, because we've all worn different masks. We've all made choices we regret. We've all feared not being enough. And in watching the flawed, brilliant, destructive Rumpel, we were reminded that healing is possible, but it will cost you. And yes, all magic comes with a price, but sometimes so does growth, so does love, so does peace. His legacy is that of the eternal struggler, the broken man who kept trying. And whether you remember him for his iconic laugh, his sharp tongue, or his haunted eyes, one thing is clear: Rumpelstiltskin mattered. Not just in the show, but to us. Okay, so before you click out, don't click out. I will get on camera, but I look a hot mess. First of all, thank you for watching this video. Secondly, really quick about the video, I repeated myself so many times and I had so many mess ups. I had over like an hour and I think hour and 30 minutes of voiceover. I got it down pretty good though, but I just need to say that because I know somebody's like, okay, didn't she just say this part? Yes, I did. I'm sorry. But thank you for watching and staying this long. Also, I wanted to make the announcement that I am starting my Patreon. For those of you who have not watched my Exo Kitty video, I explained on there that I recently lost my job, which is why I've been putting out so many videos. If you've been here for a while, you know my videos came out once every few months because I was working and I had, other obligations. But now that my job closed down on me, this is my source of income. However, this YouTube channel is not generating the money that it once did. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, if all the creators, the new creators are, taking up the space of the funds, but I can't even afford my rent right now. And I'm freaking out because, applying to different jobs as well as just trying to stay true to my craft and build my creativity. It's a lot. And I'm not just sitting around. Like I said, I'm applying to different places. I'm not getting callbacks. I'm freaking out about my circumstances because I can barely pay my car note with the amount of money that I'm getting. I also said this on my Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, what's the tea? Follow me on Instagram. But no, even if you can join my Patreon for a few months as a donation, that would be amazing because I really need it. Over there we will have exclusive content that won't be on YouTube. Just a quick little run through. The first tier will be just a general support if you don't really care to have the exclusive content but you want to help me out. That's the first tier. The second one is going to be the watch along commentary, and I cannot wait to go through each episode for Once Upon a Time. That's my pick, but you guys get to pick which ones you want me to talk about as far as different shows as well as movies, and we'll just be watching it and commenting along, which I don't understand how people can do it on YouTube because I have issues with copyright and I don't even have all of the clips that everybody else uses and they're just watching and upload. I don't know, but that's a good platform to do the copywritten material also. So that's the second tier. The third tier will be the watch along as well as the hot topics. It's a lot of stuff going on with these celebrities and behind the scenes things, and it can be new stuff that's going on in today's time, or it can be something from back in the day that maybe nobody talks about anymore, or you just want to know my opinion about something that happened way back when, you know, because I like the energy of the channel, so I don't want to start doing like gossip stuff on here or whatever, because we keep it pretty fun and we keep it pretty chill. So I don't want to bring that to YouTube, but I think that would be a good way to do it over on Patreon. Also, we have the last tier, which is if you have it to give a little bit more, you can join that tier, and it's really just for support. You'll get everything that the previous tiers have, of course, and you'll also get producing credits on YouTube videos, because, you know, that's what producers do. They provide the money. But no, if you guys can, I truly appreciate it, because I am freaking out. I'm probably gonna post about my Patreon in the coming videos, just to let people know, just if you have it to give, you know. And yeah, I really need to get to sleep right now because it's pretty late. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and let you guys know the Patreon will be linked below, and just let me know. So now I'll see y'all over there. Back to this video. Rumple. I feel like Rumple and Regina were definitely my favorite characters. What do you guys' take on Carlyle's depiction of Rumple? Also, what aspect of his story did you relate most to, or did you find most jarring? It's a lot going on. It was a lot going on, and I really didn't dive deep into, you know, each thing that happened, each thing that he did, because like I said, I want to do that on the Patreon. I want to do it, you know, really go through it. You know, this video would be like 10 hours long if I did every thing that if I talked about everything that he did, but it was more so just an overview character analysis. But and I know these last couple of videos have been very buttoned up. I mean, I joked a little bit, but not as much. On the Patreon, we will be just regular blush, like real. Y'all know I don't take nothing serious for real. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna be back in the cuts, back with the giggles. You know the word that comes before the giggles, but I can't say that on here. But yeah, just let me know what you guys think about his character. What parts was your favorite in the show with him? And I had another question I want to ask y'all about with Rumple. I can't remember right now. If I remember, I'll put it in the comments. Anyways, with all that being said, because I'm rambling, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to click like and hop on over to that subscribe button and hit the bell. Otherwise, YouTube will never show you my videos. As always, I'm all ears. Until next time, bye.